HarperCollins presents Failures of State, the inside story of Britain's battle with coronavirus, by Jonathan Calvert and George Arbuthnott. Read by Ben Onwukwe. Prologue. You must stay at home. The last Monday before the clocks went back in March 2020 had been a day for brisk walks in the sunshine under flawless azure skies. But the freshness and promise of a fine spring day at the end of a long rainy winter did little to temper the collective sense of unease being felt across Britain. As darkness fell, people hunkered down in their homes, unsure about what would happen next. Like participants in an all-too-real doomsday film, the nation tuned into radios, switched on their televisions and flicked through their smartphones, awaiting that evening's important announcement on the only issue of the moment, the virus. It was a crisis unlike any other in modern Britain, and it now gripped the country. People feared for their lives. Outside, beneath the stars, the flashing blue lights of ambulances strafed through empty city streets, their wailing sirens amplified in the stillness. It had been almost 3 months since the stealthy killer had crept into the country, and it was now replicating itself with alarming speed. The virus had already embedded itself in the lungs of more than 1 million people in the UK, and many of them would perish in the grim weeks that followed. One hospital had been forced to turn away patients because it could not cope with such a large number of infections, and France was threatening to close its borders to England. The French were horrified by the way the virus had been allowed to run rampant without tougher control measures being introduced by their English neighbours a few miles across the Channel. The crisis was beginning to look desperate, and finally, something had to be done. The Prime Minister was guaranteed an immense and captive audience for his address to the nation, which had been scheduled at 8:30 p.m., a later time than his now familiar daily press conferences, which signified that something serious was about to be announced. This was the kind of historic moment that Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson believed he had been born for. As a young child with supreme self-confidence, Johnson had told his family he would be a world king, although he eventually lowered his sights to settle for Prime Minister. His adolescent role model had been Winston Churchill, the doughty leader who had rallied Britain through the last great national emergency, the Second World War. In his 2014 biography of his illustrious predecessor, The Churchill Factor, Johnson describes how thrusting young Tories regarded Churchill as a divinity and sported posters of their pin-striped, cigar-chomping idol on teenage walls. He was no doubt referring to a particular teenager with a shot of blonde, shaggy hair and a comparably large ego. One of the key arguments in Johnson's biography is that Adolf Hitler would have won the war, and Nazism would have prevailed throughout Europe had it not been for his hero Prime Minister. This was now Johnson's moment to rally the nation in its darkest hour. Could he summon his inner Churchill and save Britain from the threat of the coronavirus pandemic? 28 million people tuned in to watch Johnson's address from Downing Street that evening. The camera had framed the doorway of the White Drawing Room, the great state reception overlooking the No. 10 Gardens, which has hosted US presidents from Ronald Reagan to Barack Obama, and was once used by Churchill himself as his bedroom. In the middle of the frame was Johnson, looking his most headmasterly, as he earnestly leant forward towards the camera with clasped hands, his elbows resting on a polished antique desk. Such was the gravity of the moment, He had even combed his haystack hair into something resembling neatness.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?